Hey everyone, welcome back. Learn for Two podcast. This is Brandon DeVere. Thank you as always for tuning in. I appreciate you and you sharing your time with me. Today is a very special moment in the history of the podcast. It's something that I had not originally started the idea of, but then after so many episodes, I decided that we kind of needed to get some other people in here sharing their value, what they have. Obviously, I don't know everything. I don't even know all the questions to be asking people, but I try to surround myself with some amazing people, and you are in for a treat today to learn from Cliff Duvernois. You've heard me mention him on the podcast before. He is an entrepreneur and a relentless innovator in the content creation industry. Cliff is the author of The Entrepreneur's Guide to LinkedIn Marketing Secrets. Duvernois has also been called provocative and entertaining, but also a committed philanthropist for his mission to raise and donate over $10,000 to local and military-related charities each year. Cliff also supports many great national charities too, such as Network for Teaching, Entrepreneurship, Warrior Foundation, Freedom Station, Cancer Research Institute, Special Olympics, among others. Cliff's current mission to impact and inspire 1 million people. He chronicles his mission in a show called Path to 1 Million, which I definitely suggest you take a look at and check it out. We'll get you some links on that. This episodic series focuses on the 1% journey, the journey to be 1% better each single day across areas of mind, body, business, and relationships, as well as spirituality. And it's my honor to introduce you, the very first guest of the Learn for Two podcast, Mr. Cliff Duvernois. Hey, Cliff, how's it going?
Good, Brandon. How you doing, brother?
I am doing well. And so we were just kind of talking about this, and we've talked about it for a while. My original plan was to have no guests on the podcast. The only guests I've had so far has been my son for a quick cameo. And
I heard that one.
Just
yes.
What's that?
I heard that episode. Yeah.
Yeah. So that just kind of fit what the plan was. It wasn't like 2 weeks in advance. I decided it was where the podcast was going. That's kind of my style of the podcast I'm running now, is just kind of journaling. And he happened to fit in that journal that day. Wanted to have him out there. But we talked a couple months ago. We were going to do this at the beginning of the year. Unfortunately, both of us got sick. Both of them, we had to kind of go back and forth. But you have been an integral part in me starting my podcast and being consistent with it, because we both kind of started at the same time. But I saw you doing your video and doing your Facebook Live and all that, and just want to say already your path to 1 million. You have at least one right here that you have impacted.
Thanks.
And can you explain a little bit about what Path to 1 Million is?
Sure. So the genesis of the idea actually came from, it was probably, I want to say it's 1.5 years or 2 years ago, where I wanted to, I have certain goals that I want to meet throughout the year. And one of the things that I really wanted to do is I wanted to come up with like a moonshot, right? What is something that, would scare me to death? What is something that is not something that I can kind of accomplish in a day or a week or even a month? What is something that I could literally commit my life to? And I really did put a lot of forethought behind that. And what it was is on Facebook, publishing these stories that I'm telling, these little short stories, is I was just amazed at when I would put these stories out there, people were contacting me and talking to me about how my stories were inspiring them, and they loved the stories, and they were, commenting and sharing the post, and, they were getting other people to listen. And I was completely overwhelmed with the outpouring of support and love from people about me just sharing simple stories throughout the day, lessons that I was learning along the way. And I thought to myself, you know what, if I can inspire just one person to, be better, or maybe to go out and do something positive to impact their local community, or, maybe to get a little bit better in their relationships with their spouse or with their coworker, then that makes it all worthwhile, leading by example and sharing my example with everybody there. So what I did is I said, you know what, that's what I want to do. I want to be a positive impact, because there's a lot of negativity out there in the world now, but I want to be like a positive impact on the people and the world around me. So I'm just going to get out there and I'm going to share my stories, but I'm going to share them at scale and just get as many people as I can to listen to the stories and to take action on that particular account. So that's where the whole genesis of the idea came from.
Awesome. And it's like I don't know if you felt this, I'm sure you have though, but the compound, like the compounding interest, or whatever you want to call it, that not just you affecting the person that listened to it, but like you said, maybe they'll go out in their communities. Like it's not just who's hearing you, but it's what are the people that are hearing you are doing to impact others. So like your exponential impact will be immeasurable at some point.
Yes.
And it probably already is. You probably have helped people that haven't even reached back out to you, and they have helped other people, do it as well. So that's amazing. So do you ever get this? Because the way our minds typically think, we're always thinking about dollars, right? So Path to 1 million, how many people have thought when they listen to they hear the name of it, it's Path to $1 million?
Believe it or not that very many people.
Really?
If people hear about the name of the show, they're not thinking like Path to $1 million.
Okay.
What they do is they'll sit there and say, "Hey, Cliff, I know you've got this Path to 1 million. Could you talk to me a little bit more about it?"
Okay.
I don't think I've ever portrayed myself as somebody who's out there like, actively working to make all this money, and this is what I want to do, and this is my journey. My journey has always been about the impact on people's lives. So I thought the exact same thing that you did when I came up with the name, coined it, started putting it out there, the name of the podcast. I actually sat back and wondered how many people are going to think this is my journey to make $1 million, but nobody's ever asked me that question. So it could be something to the fact that, the people who listen to the show have grown to know me, and they know that, that isn't my focus of the Path to 1 million. It's more about impacting and sharing the stories that are out there. So I'm just as surprised as you are about that, but it's an alignment with what I want to do. So I'm glad that message is getting out.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Cause I thought for the same thing. I went to Grant Cardone last weekend, and his is like 10X, but it's all money. Like it's all about money. And this isn't an episode to talk about whether or not money is good or bad, but it was just my thought with all those people out there that are selling these programs that is about how you're going to 10X, how you're going to double your income, make yourself this rich person where you're going. Yeah, I guess it is rich. It's making you rich as a person, not financially, but as you're impacting others, and how they can learn from you. And that's one of the things, we kind of briefly talked about this beforehand, but why I wanted, a couple reasons why I wanted you to be my very first guest. One was because of the impact that you've already had on me and have pushed me to continue with this. But also that you are, you are in essence learning for other people with the intent to teach them. And that's one of the three things of what this podcast is about is, hey, you'll learn something. Don't hold it for yourself. Go teach it. And as you're doing it, you're inspiring people. So with the way that your podcast is set up is more of like a journal style, right? Where you're going to kind of, you talk about stuff daily, you talk about stories, you've been emotional, you've been vulnerable, you put yourself out there. And I think that helps a lot of people. And I just want to kind of get your opinion on this as well. Is we live in a society right now of before and after photos where there's nothing in between. So you see somebody that lost 100 pounds and you can't relate to that person because you say, oh, well, that's John. He lost 100 pounds because now you see him now and he goes, I go to CrossFit 3 times a week. I'm on keto. I do all this, but you don't see day 37 where he had a, double animal style fries. And so the time that you do that, you're like, I'm done. Like I'm not him.
Right.
So you're putting it into a way where people can go, you know what, here's episode, 117. That happened to me. I'm just like Cliff. If he can do it, I can do it. And kind of putting it out there where, I've seen you shed tears on your, I'm not, hopefully that doesn't put you on the spot right now, but I've seen you shed tears and be open with people and be like, hey, this is the struggle of what I'm doing right now. And I really feel that people can relate to that way more than they can to you saying, hey, I started to do this Facebook Live thing and started the Path to 1 million, and now I'm on a private jet. Like from there to there. Like no, in my opinion, people can't relate to that as well. And I'm assuming that you have a bunch of people, like you said, reaching out, and they are totally in, like they're relating to you and probably sending you, hey, what would you asking for advice? Have you had anybody ask you for advice?
Actually, a couple times I've had people reach out to me and say, they're like, wow, thank you so much for sharing your story. Here is, a little bit about what I'm facing.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts, or what are you thinking on that? And I've always been of the slant that I'm not really out to offer advice,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because there's a lot of things about a lot of people's situations that I just don't know, and I don't want to step in there and be like, oh, well, it's because you're doing this and because you're doing that. A lot of the stories that I tell are ultimately based on self-reflection, right? It's a matter of, how does this make me feel? Here's the story. This is how it makes me feel, and moving forward from there. So, when people have reached out to me and, have kind of like asked some questions and, kind of like feeling their way, what I'll oftentimes do is, because I explore so much, I'm all the time asking questions, I'm all the time curious, I will always refer them to another resource, whether it's a book that they can read or a video series that they can watch or something else like that. But I don't, I'm not in the advice giving business. I don't have any plans. Some people have said to me, wow, you're trying to sound like Tony Robbins. No, that's not my thing.
Yeah.
He's, his path is different from mine. He is clearly qualified to say and do these things and be able to help these people get over their problems and challenges. That's not what I'm doing. All I'm doing is sharing the story, and hopefully I can inspire somebody to sit there and say, you know what, I'm facing this challenge too. Maybe I need to go out and, look on Amazon or go to Google or go onto YouTube and start researching this topic to find out what kind of answers that I can get to help me to get through this situation or solve this problem. Because if Cliff can do it, if Cliff can find a way, then I can find it as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's awesome. That is awesome. And getting people to relate to it. It's funny that people do that. Going back to the Tony Robbins thing, like you're trying to sound like Tony Robbins. There's only one Tony Robbins, and there's a couple other like big time speakers, but that people would relate you to. But when you get in your space and you start like sharing like that, it's funny how people will kind of pigeonhole you like that. Yeah. And then you'd be like, all right, well, Pizza Hut makes pizza. So does every pizza place trying to imitate a Pizza Hut? Or, there's like, you can still do your thing and not be like Tony Robbins, and you can still inspire people by not being Tony Robbins. And that's kind of what I like about your flair. Like we both belong to a storytelling and writing group for a number of years. And even to this day, you are one of my favorite writers of your style and what you share and how you do it. It's always been, I've always enjoyed it. And it's been, and it's your style. It's not you trying to imitate, somebody else. So, I mean, understanding that, you understanding that, I'm not trying to be Tony Robbins. This is me trying to self-reflection. And in my opinion, not enough people do it, and share it with others. And that's kind of what you've gotten me to open up on my own podcast, because I've seen how vulnerable and how you are sharing, hey, this is just what I'm talking about.
Right.
So, I think that's awesome. I mean, do you have a story of a time that like something that you've had, like your biggest impact that you've had on anybody, that maybe somebody's reached out to you offline just saying, hey, Cliff, I was in a tough spot, or just something that you've really made the biggest impact that you think that you've had on somebody?
So, wow, that's a really good question. Cause I've had a number of people reach out to that. I would have to say that I think the biggest impact that I had was when I made the announcement that my father had been diagnosed with dementia. Mm-hmm. And when I came out with that story, of course, it was really hard for me to share that, because it's, I went through I think it's like the 8 stages of, acceptance or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And I went through denial, I went through anger, I went through everything. And that was a hard pill for me to swallow, because my dad's always been like this, really tough guy, but to see him start to, lose grasp of little things in his life really impacted me. And when I started opening up and sharing that as part of my journey, because, there were some days where, I sat down to do the video for Path to 1 Million, and my heart was breaking, and the thing is that I've always promised people that if you're going to listen to my stuff, it's going to be authentic.
Yeah.
And that is what I had been feeling. It was what was heavy on my heart. So, I share it. And as I go out, and of course I share the story, number one, the outpouring of support from the listeners was just over the top. I mean, I got so much love on the different social media channels. I had people emailing me, writing me, texting. I had a couple of people calling me. They were providing me with all kinds of resources. A podcast that I used to do, I had a couple people from there reach out to me with like resources, and to me it was just very inspiring. And as I'm sharing this story, I had one lady in particular who reached out to me, who was dealing with the same thing with, with her dad and her situation. And, from her standpoint, it was, she didn't feel like she was by herself anymore, because there was
Oh
somebody out there
yeah.
who was actively talking about this on Facebook. Because a lot of the times, if you look at Facebook, if you look at Instagram, people are always posting their, the happy-go-lucky, oh, here's my family, we're so perfect, da 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 da. Somebody clicks on my video, and I'm barely holding it together while I'm
Yeah.
sharing this video, this very painful thing. And so, from her standpoint, she didn't feel like she was by herself anymore. She didn't feel like she was alone having to go through these battles. And so for me, I think that was, I wasn't doing it to get attention. If anything, I was just trying to draw attention to the fact that, there are people out there who are being diagnosed with dementia all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
here's your loved ones and stuff. And, hey, you know what? You're not alone. I wasn't offering any solutions. I wasn't trying to hawk some kind of vitamin cocktail that was going to
Yeah.
cure everybody.
Yeah.
That wasn't my intent. All I was doing was just sharing the story, sharing my views and or viewpoints on it, excuse me, and, what I was going through. And I referenced that story. I still talk about it every now and then, but when it first came out, it was kind of like the dominant feeling on my mind. And it's just the outpouring of support, and the people that just reached out to me was like, hey, this is what you're talking about here needs to be talked about. Not very many people are talking about this. So, with that being said, I would have to say that alone right there, it was the most heart-wrenching story I've ever shared out
Mm-hmm.
there. But at the same point in time, the people that reached back out to me with their support and telling me, hey, I'm facing the same thing, thank you for talking about it. That to me was extremely, extremely powerful.
Yeah. And at that point, you're probably like, I'll change the name to Path to One. It was probably all worth it, right? I'm sure everything that you've done so far is worth that person, because you made it to them for it to be okay. Like you said, Facebook and all this, all it's highlight reel. It's not, a sporting event where a guy throws an incomplete pass. How often do they show that in his Hall of Fame, thing? And that's what Facebook and social media in general has become. I mean, nobody's saying, hashtag paperwork or look, I'm doing the dishes, like all the stuff that everyone does, but you're putting it into perspective for someone to be like, what, today sucks. And this is what I'm going through. And there's someone else out there that's going through something terrible. And you made it okay to have those feelings, because we're kind of taught, I guess, I don't know if it's a societal thing or what, but that we need, especially as men, we need to be strong. We need to be strong. And also with you seeing your father that's supposed to be strong, and now he's not the same as he was. Like, my mother passed away of Alzheimer's when I was 18. So by the time I was 12, she kind of started fading away, and I couldn't grasp it. But just like you're not trying to fix anybody's problem, right? You're not saying, because I've done this my entire life as well, is one of the things I don't like at all is when people go, I know what you're going through. And it's not like, because I think about this, when I went back, I told this story a couple of days ago where I was a kid. I was 12 years old when my mom got sick. I don't know, like right now, being grown, having all those memories, like there's stuff that I don't really even remember about her. And I just kind of had to deal with it at that point. But now add on to decades and decades of relationship, it's not the same thing. Like, I don't know what you're going through, but if you want to talk about it, then we can talk about it. I just don't know what you're going through. We've had a, somewhat similar situation, but I love that. I love that you were able to just Path to One, man. Just, you hit that person and you gave them the opportunity to just be okay with it. And I think that's awesome what you're doing. What you're doing in that Path to 1 million. And like I said, I originally thought it was $1 million, and I was like, what is he doing? $1 million? What's this? But then now seeing it, that is, I'm curious to know, you probably have no idea how many people you've actually impacted at this point, right? I mean, on the surface of likes and shares and comments and stuff, but exponentially probably higher than what you'd even imagine.
Yeah, it's and I do want to talk about something here because we talk about content, and I had a thought pop up about this is kind of like the power of community. Mm-hmm. When you go out there and you start sharing stories, I mean, my whole thing is like, I want to go out there and share stories that inspire people to take action. And one of the things that happened, it's a side benefit of it, is this community that was created. because the people who listen to my content on a daily basis, people who read my stories on a daily basis, right? They're, for lack of a better term, they're joining my community. And they talk about, a lot of like Gary Vaynerchuk, right? He's really big in creating communities and stuff. And the thing is, I never looked at the people who were consuming my content as, a part of a community, but it was always one of the things that the pact that I made with the community was that I would always be real. I'd always be authentic. I would always share what's on my heart. If I make a mistake, I'm going to tell you. If I have a good day, I'm going to tell you. If I have a bad day, I'm going to tell you. If I screw up royally, I'm going to share that. And I think people really appreciate that authenticity. Mm-hmm. And the one thing is that, going back to the conversation with my father, on this particular day, it wasn't, Cliff taking care of the community. This became community taking care of Cliff.
Oh, it's amazing.
And that to me, awesome. Just when I sat down and I started thinking about it afterwards, and I've got goosebumps right now, just that concept alone.
Yeah.
Because these people enjoy my message so much and they love my message so much. And, they're like, wow, this is really great. Something positive that's in my day. The one day that I stepped up there and I'm like, look, guys, this is what I'm dealing with. And I shared the story and it was super tough. I broke down. Like you said, there was some tears and I was just trying to be honest and authentic. The community really rallied around me, and that furthermore fueled me to like recommit myself to what it is that I wanted to do and to keep sharing those stories because like I said, you never know who you're going to impact and you never know who, is going to, take that one story that I did and, run off with it and change the world or like change the one, something that they had something that they had in their life. So, I say this because, I know that you help a lot of people to create their content. And, the one benefit of that is when you're out there creating your content and you're sharing your stories is you are building an audience, you are building a community. And because there's people out there who want to hear what you have to say, and the message out there, my message has always been to try to be positive as I can be. Sometimes it does come across as negative, but like I said, it's just being authentic. So I just wanted to share that with you, and I apologize because suddenly I can't remember what your question was.
No, that was a great turn because it made me actually think of something. And in your, I hadn't even thought of you asking this question until you just mentioned this, but in your quest to impact 1 million people, did you ever think that you would impact yourself through impacting other people? Like, is that because you were definitely impacted by the community reaching out to you, your community that you created or brought together, shared a message with them for so long. And then here you are being held up. So your community comes to you for you to hold them up. But how awesome is that the time that you need to be held up, they are there to hold you up. Like to me, I don't know. Sorry, I'm getting goosebumps now thinking of that because it's like, it's so amazing even when I go and I sorry to sidetrack a little bit, but someone asked about billboard sign for a real estate agent on a Facebook thing that I saw. And they're like, you should do this, or should I do this or not? And I said, my comment was start a podcast. Let people get to know who you are, not just a real estate agent, but who you are. And the first comment I got was a guy that said, well, what would a new agent talk about? And I said, themselves. Like, let people get to know you. And like, that's what you have done. You've got people to know you, and now they want to help you, and they want to, and it's not, you didn't start this with the idea that you're going to get a bunch of people to help you. You started this by leading with value and giving to others. And now all of a sudden the time that you needed it, and you didn't even ask for it. You said, hey, I'm still bringing the value to you. And they said, Cliff needs us right now. Like, let's step together. And all those people thought I'm sure they didn't comment to each other and said, hey, you know what? We should talk to Cliff. They all got it and said, let's contact him. So that's amazing to know that your impact impacted others, which in turn impacted you, which I never even thought of that until you just mentioned that. So that is awesome.
Let me share with you something here, because he's one of the strongest influences that I have right now in my life, and that would be Gary Vaynerchuk.
Okay.
And I know, you're a big fan of Gary as well as I did, but his whole premise or his whole philosophy is, give without the expectation of return. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think with a lot of people out there, if they're starting a podcast or if they're writing an article, they approach it from a standpoint of, well, I'm going to put this out there and, like for a real estate agent, for instance, I'm going to put this out there. And if I don't get a client from it, then I'm just not going to do it anymore. And that to me is not, it's not giving in a true sense. Giving is when you give something without that expectation that something's going to come back to you. So when I, like I said, when I shared that story, I wasn't looking for sympathy. I wasn't looking for, people to pat me on the back and say, it'll be okay. I didn't talk about any of that stuff. It never even crossed my mind. But the sheer fact that, like I said, the community was there. They love the stories. They love the inspirational feeling. They love that positive message. They were the ones on their own who made the decision to reach back out to me, and do that. So it's like you've said before, like multiple times, leading with value. It's leading with value without that expectation of a return. And that's when I think that real magic starts to happen, because you've gone from dedicating yourself from making just a buck to really impacting and influencing people's lives.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you hit it right on there too. And that is, one of the things that a lot of times we are wanting that, instant gratification one, but we're also wanting that input output. Like, I did this, I should receive this. And I believe your comment 100%, about not wanting anything or expecting anything in return. I mean, I hear people all the time talk about their passion is selling homes, right?
Right.
Well, go sell your next 30 homes for free. How passionate are you about it, right? How many episodes do you have now?
216.
216. How many episodes have you been paid directly to do? 0. Exactly. So that's passion to me. That is, and that's what's awesome is that you're, like you said, you're giving, you're doing this, and it did come back in a form that was not a financial payment, but there probably wasn't an amount of money to make you feel good at that time that those comments and those people reaching back out to you actually did. And so it's just funny when, people talk about certain passions and you're like, well, here's a passion, 216 episodes. I get on, I do it from my car. I do it from, the office, wherever I can get Wi-Fi.
Yep.
And, and that's one thing is, we both also have, you talked about Gary Vee. Both of us have talked about, Russell Brunson, ClickFunnels, stuff like that. We've both,
Yes.
Did you end up doing the One Funnel Away challenge?
I did.
As well. Yeah. And that's kind of the same time that I started my podcast, was where I was like, oh, Steve said, start publishing daily. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And then again, here you are, you did it right at the same time. And all of a sudden I saw, well, Cliff did it. Cliff's doing it right now. So, and we've collaborated on a lot of stuff. And so I just want to say that you are instrumental, as well as not just your daily, the daily comments of like the content that you're giving out, because that has been helpful for me too, but just your desire and your drive to publish, daily or almost daily, to get out there where I go,
thank you.
Cliff is doing, like, you've been kind of like with the pace car, is that what they call it? Like keeping me going, all right, well, Cliff, I'm catching up to him. I got to catch him. Not, not really in that
right,
type of competitive way, but seeing that, what this is, he's getting behind it. It doesn't matter that he's in his car. And I'm not sure if it was in that class or if I heard it somewhere else. But done is better than perfect.
Correct.
Do you remember hearing that?
Yes.
Recently in the last, and I can't remember where I heard it, because I've been, just both of us have been in this wild consumption of all kinds of things, trying to figure out, how to better our storytelling and do all that. So I can't remember exactly where I heard it. It was probably from the One Funnel Away challenge, but what is your take on done is better than perfect?
Well, the thing is, and this is something that I think actually stems back from going to school and education and stuff. And I'm not trying to spark an educational debate here, but we're kind of taught that making mistakes is bad. So what people try to do is they try to do something perfect on the first try. And if they can't do it perfect on the first try, or even envision that they can, they don't even start. And there'll always be some kind of an excuse of, I don't have a microphone, I don't have a camera, I don't have, anything to say, I don't have any of this, I don't have any of that. But the one thing is that I remember when back in 2017, when I started publishing my little stories onto Facebook, I was also doing a newsletter at the time. I just remember that, people that I was working with, the groups that I was in, like PSS with Ryan Fletcher that you and I were both in, that's where we met, was just get the thing out there.
Yeah.
Just get it out there, And the thing is, I've learned that the only way that you're going to perfect something is by doing it, is by practice, is by example. So if you think you're going to sit down and play the piano perfect on the very first try, that's not going to happen, right? It's going to have to sit down. You're going to have to practice over and over and over again. But to really move the ball forward, you're going to have to make that public commitment to play at a recital. And then that's going to force you to get even better. You might play sort of good, okay at the recital, but you know what? You move on to the next recital. And the more you put into it, the better you get. So if you take a look at like the path to 1 million, those first videos that I shot, like 1 through 30, every single day, I was just so embarrassed because I knew they were bad. I knew they were horrible. And I was the king of, like, so,
Yeah.
and I was just hearing that. If I go back and listen to the episode again, that's what I was hearing in my head. And I was like so embarrassed by it. And I would have people reach out and, oh, you did a great job. You did a great job. But I didn't feel it. Well, now at episode 215, episode 216, because I have all of that experience now behind me, it makes it much easier to stand up and to give that story and to be able to share that particular story. And because life is constantly happening, I never run out of content to talk about. Yeah. This is the one thing where you mentioned before about when you told that one real estate agent to start a podcast, right? Yeah. Their whole thing was like, well, what do you talk about? Well, their default position is, and this is something I learned, because being in real estate, is the only people who like talk about real estate is real estate agents, right? So, so if you get up there and you start a podcast just thinking you're just going to talk about real estate, at some point in time, you're going to start running out of topics to talk about. At some point in time, when you switch over and start sharing the stories, here's a couple that I helped, and share their story and what it is that they were struggling with and what you did to help them arrive at a decision. Maybe put off, buying a house for another year, even though that not getting a commission check for you, it was the right thing to do, and put those stories out there. Once you get better at sharing these stories, then it becomes a question when people do stumble across your content, when they do listen to your content, it's all of a sudden a focus of the content of your character that they're learning about, right? Because we all know this, that, people know you, like you, trust you, then they'll do business with you. Yep. And if you just stand up there and just talk about humdrum topics, well, people get to know you. Yeah, well, kind of, sort of. But people get to know you more through the stories that you share, the mistakes that you made, or, perhaps, a victory that you had, or something along those lines. But that is what really helps to move the ball forward. And there's been a number of times where people have reached out to me through my business, and they're like, I chose to do business with you because here's an example. I wrote, after my sister passed away, I wrote a story, and, I published it out there, and I put it on my personal website, and I shared it. Well, he actually Googled my name, found my personal website, read that story. And then he and I were sitting around a conference table talking. I did not know that he found the story, but he and I were sitting around a conference table, and we were talking. We were waiting for a third member of our team to show up. And he goes, Cliff, he says, I have to tell you something. I Googled your name and I checked you out. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, oh no, you found some college picture of like me drinking a beer, like, yeah. And he goes, I stumbled across that story that you wrote about your sister. So now I go quiet, right? Because I don't know what's going to come next.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he started getting choked up right then and there. And he actually said to me, when I read that story about you and your sister, I knew you were the one to work with, because last year I lost my mother. And I knew that you understood that pain. And that's why I'm sitting at this table right now.
Wow.
And I'm sitting over there. Number one, I'm completely blown away. Number two, I'm starting to get choked up, because I'm thinking about that story. But he was convinced. He's like, Cliff's my guy. Just because I shared a story. It had nothing to do with business or anything else like that. It was just, my sister passed away, and these are the dear, cherished memories that I have of that. And he was like, because you get it, because you got heart, because you're willing to open yourself up to this. And so, just by sharing these stories and showing the world the content of your character, I think can really help you to open doors. If somebody's on the fence or whatever it is, it's just so easy to say, hey, check out my podcast. If you're still not convinced that I'm the right guy for you or the right woman for you, then, best of luck in the future, and it's one of the things that we learned. Let the media do the heavy lifting. Get out there and share your stories in the form of a podcast. If you're not comfortable talking to the microphone, if you love writing, to do writing. You know, it's there's so many different platforms, so many different ways to get your story, your message out in front of all of these people.
Yeah, and I want to go back there too. With that, is that you didn't write that story with the intent that somebody would randomly find it and say, I want to work with you, right? You wrote that story with zero expectations other than, this is me, this is who I am. Like, for the most part, we're all so guarded all the time, right? Yeah. So we want to project this. Here I am, I'm standing next to a helicopter with a, some kind of car behind me with a big watch. I'm the guy for you to sell you whatever, right? Yeah. And so that's what a lot of people are aiming for. But then when you get that client that does search you up and actually reads the whole thing and so this is my guy, like, that's a guy that you want to work with, right? That guy that does that. And it's not, like I said, I just wanted to reemphasize that, what you said earlier about, doing 216 episodes, talking about things without expectation, and then something, it just happens to happen. It's not, I just wanted to make sure the listeners and the viewers are not like thinking that we're saying, oh, hey, go out and, be vulnerable because someone's going to find you in 5 years.
Right.
That's not it. Go out, be yourself, tell people, get people, like you said, to know, like, and trust you. You said something, you said people get to know you through the stories that you share. I had to write that down because I'm stealing it, by the way. And
please,
I'm stealing a couple things from you from this, by the way, because you're having me think about, things in different ways and things like that. But for someone, so we're talking about having more people do this. We want more people to do this, and be more authentic. And so we can all get to kind of know each other and be part of a community. Do you have a piece of advice or a couple pieces of advice for someone that may have been thinking about, hey, I want to do a video, I want to do a podcast, I want to write, a couple ideas of, or advice that would get them started?
Well, so some of the best people, if somebody were to walk up to me today and say, hey, I'm interested in doing what you're doing, the one thing that I would always say is I would say, go out there and find the people who are doing it now. Model what it is that they're doing. And it doesn't have to be me, but just go out and find somebody who is doing what it is that you're doing. And if you want to go to, like a Gary Vaynerchuk level, he's got, millions of followers. He's the king of producing content on all these platforms, then you can do it. If you're like a solopreneur, then find another solopreneur who is doing this and who, believes in what you're doing. Follow them, look at what they're doing. And then from there, start off and say, okay, so, what can I do to adapt this to my situation? What can I do to start to move the ball forward? Maybe, for me, doing the Facebook Lives every single day, that to me was something that came out of, the One Funnel Away challenge that you were talking about before, because they were like, produce content and share stories every day. And I was already in that frame of mind anyway. So I was like, well, let's just, wrap a video around it. So I just did it. But before I did it, I actually went out and watched other people's videos and watched what they were doing. And a lot of the times when people would do a video, I would remember thinking to myself, okay, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And those are some of the lessons that you can learn, right? Is what not to do. Like, this isn't, this isn't comfortable. There were some people out there that did nothing but talk about, their business. And I found myself like getting a little bit bored because every video was like the exact same message over and over and over again. And so I had already lucked out in the fact that, I was already producing these stories every single day. So for me, it was just like kind of like creating a video version around that. And so I go out there and I just launched the video on, like, like you said, done is better than perfect. But I just went out there and I launched the video. But, to go back to something you said before, and I want to make sure that I reiterate this point, is, it's boiled down to the expectations, right? So I didn't write The Sister of My Story expecting that in the future it was going to lead to business, right? So if you read, there's an excellent book out there that's called, I believe it's called The 1% Solution.
Okay.
Part of that 1% journey. And he actually, in that book, he talks about how the difference between, if you take a look at, you got expectations on one side, then you got reality on the other side, disappointments in the middle, because expectations will never meet reality. So if you go in there with having these high expectations that, well, I'm going to produce a podcast and I'm going to write all this content and it's going to bring me all of this business, guess what? You're going to hit a huge disappointment gulp, right? Now, it may be something that happens in a year, might be a year and a half, and it might be 2 years. But at some point in time, by producing this content, by putting it out there, because like you said before, you never know who is it's going to impact.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are people every day who read my content. They never like it. They never share it, never comment on it. But I'll be darned if I'm like not out at like church on Sunday morning and someone goes, "Oh, hey, Cliff, I love that article that you wrote on Tuesday about X, Y, and Z."
Yep.
Now, did that bring me any business? No. Did it put any money in my pocket? Absolutely not. But it inspired him, and it pleases me that he found it so compelling that when he saw me, he's like, yes, I need to tell Cliff about that. So, you know, as far as like recommendations about getting started, find those people, model what they're doing. You know, if people love to, if you love what somebody's doing, you know, copy what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they always say like, you know, great artists copy, no, artists copy, great artists steal, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
People want to use my content. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. Get out there and just share your stories. You know, it's not, you know, nobody's going to point at you and be like, oh, I saw this other guy named Cliff doing it. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
What they care about is the story that you're sharing. You know, people like to go out there. People like to see positive things on Facebook and hear positive stories. So, you know, find that model and then just, you know, execute on it. And, you know, but put in the effort, put in the time, you know, make sure that you're consistently publishing, whether it's once a week, whether it's 5 days a week, whether it's 7 days a week, but just make sure that you're out there consistently doing it. Lately, I've been struggling with the consistency part,
Mm-hmm.
but I am getting better at it. So, you know, and that's part of the journey. That's part of the story that I share when I go out there. So anyways, that would be the advice that I would give people. Find somebody who's doing it, model it, follow them, observe, and then execute.
Yeah, and that's a great point that you say that, because it kind of goes back to the Tony Robbins thing, right? Where, oh, you're trying to be like Tony Robbins. Well, you know, we have that same thing. That person that said that to you thinks that like copying, if you're like somebody else and you're copying. So you're right. That, I think that's great advice, because a lot of people would not go look at see what somebody else is doing because they have that limiting belief that they are copying what somebody else is doing.
Right.
And so I love that you share that, because that is a huge way to I mean, how do you know how to do it? Well, I learned from this guy. I mean, I tell people all the time that you know, you're talking about, you didn't want to get into it like an educational debate, but I tell people all the time that I'm a proud alumni of YouTube University.
Yeah.
Like 90% of the stuff I know now, I mean, I've learned more in the last 3 years than the previous decade. And the main reason, because I was interested about something and I go, oh, YouTube knows it. YouTube knows how to do it.
Right.
How do I play this song on the guitar? I'm not a great guitarist. I can't listen to it and go, that's the note to hit. I go, pull this up. This is how they did it. Like, you play somebody else's song. Why can't you learn from them in that way? So I really appreciate that you share that, because that's something, you know, you could say, oh, go out and get this camera. This is a device. Go get this camera. This is, you know, get this computer, whatever. But you started with, it ain't broke. Don't fix it. Find somebody that's doing it the way you want to do it and emulate it. I mean, yeah. I was told when I played baseball growing up, I was told, look at your favorite hitter's swing and practice that swing. It's a Major League Baseball player. Obviously they're doing something right.
Right.
So do that, you know, do that swing. So that's awesome that you do say that and mention that. So how long does it take you now to do, have you gotten pretty efficient? I know that you, like you said, you've kind of, your consistency and is kind of a little bit here and there right now. But like you said, part of the journey. Have you found it easier? And also your daily, do you have ideas for content every single day, or is it just something of what happened the day before? Because you typically do yours fairly early in the morning, correct?
I used to do mine really early in the morning just because I got up at like 3:30 a.m. But that was Pacific Coast time. I'm now on East Coast time.
Mm-hmm.
I moved back to Michigan. So lately, my episodes have been going out somewhere between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. every single day. Mm-hmm. With regards to your questions, so there's a couple different ways I approach it. Is number one, it's gotten to the point where I'm actually able to identify something that I want to talk about that I think would be a good story.
Okay.
The second part of it is that, and there are all kinds of groups out there that do this, but I am a part of Impact Club. And part of the Impact Club is, you know, they give you like the best equivalent would be like a writing prompt every single day. So I typically will bounce back and forth between the two, you know, like, so usually the content that I put out on the weekend is stuff that I've been talking about, kind of like being in the role of like, sort of like a stepdad. And this is like something new for me. So the last couple of weeks I've been sharing stories about, my journey from there and what's it like
Yeah.
from my end, and, trying to make sure that I'm always like a, like a positive role model when, when I get around the kids, always making sure that I'm trying to do, always cognizant of the fact that I'm trying to do the right thing.
Mhm.
During the week, it will fluctuate between the different topics that they come out with, versus sometimes something will come up that is just so, impressing on my heart that I'm like, today I'm going to share this story. But I say that because if somebody is listening to this thinking to themselves, wow, how in the world am I supposed to do that? You don't have to.
Mhm.
This is just because I have been doing this now for the last 3 years.
Mhm.
So this is the voice of experience that's coming out, that just says, hey, you know what? If I can't think of anything, then I have these writing prompts that are being published, every single day out there that I think are really good. Or something in life happened to me, and this is the lesson that I learned from it, or this is the moral of the story. So,
Mhm.
but it's not, not something like every single day I'm just dreaming up a story to share and sharing it. I am getting prompts that
Mhm.
do help me to spark a thought, and maybe like one day I'll have a prompt that will last for 3 or 4 days,
Yeah.
because I'm thinking of all these different ways that I could approach it. So, but those are the two things right there. Is based on experience. A lot of the times I get ideas that I can just share. Other times it's prompts along the way that I can share. So
Okay. Do you find yourself like being way more aware of what's going on around you now as
yes,
you're, yeah. So even though you do have those prompts available to you, but you're just like, that could be a story. That could be an
yeah,
episode. Like as all day you're just hitting, you got to write it down, throw it in I use Evernote.
yes. So do
So
I.
I'll be in there popping stuff in there all the time. And I did belong to that same club as you for a while. And I've gone back to have those to kind of fall back on
Right.
as well. Cause those stories, same thing. I think we both had over 150 straight day story. You might've got over 200. I think I stopped at like
I was
168 or
close.
something like that.
I was
But
close.
you were up there, and it was, daily writing, same kind of thing. And I think that was a great, like, you know, ground training for us to kind of get to where we are now with the, podcasts and vlogs and things like that. Um, but being able to fall back on that, you're still like every day going story. Like, oh, because half the time I want to do my episode and I say, this is what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. I had something that happened last Saturday that I was going to talk about last week.
Right.
Never happened, because something else happened during that day that I know I need to share this today. This is what happened today. So it's always nice to have that kind of in the back. But Cliff, I can talk to you for hours on hour upon hours. I love what you're doing. You have impacted me. You've impacted others. It's awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to share with anybody, to just kind of, maybe how they can impact you, or how you can impact them in any way?
So, I'll just throw this out there. It's nothing that's for sale or anything else, but, if any of your listeners are out there and, they might be intrigued by the stories, they can't find me on Facebook, whatever it is, because my last name is, a lot of people can't even pronounce it, let alone
I
find
used
it.
to, before I met you, sorry to interrupt, but I first met you, I was like, Duvernois. How do you, and my last name is Devere, and people like Devere. I'm like, no, it's just so
Yeah.
easy. You're probably like, it's so easy, but
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's okay. So, if they are interested in just, hearing the stories, I don't have any kind of sales pitch or anything else like that, but if they are interested in connecting with my stories, they can always find me at coffeewithcliff.com. You can go
Okay.
there, you can drop in your email address, and I'm sending out the little stories that I post on Facebook. You can go out and, get those dropped in your box every single day. Just, little stories that, I'm sharing about my journey as I go. And, that would be, that could serve as a resource as well if people are interested in doing it. I'm getting anywhere between 3 to 8 people every single day signing up for that. So,
Nice.
that's, like I said, I don't have a sales pitch. There's no follow-up emails like, hey, buy my
Yeah.
book, buy this, buy that, whatever it is.
Yeah.
All just those little emails every single day going out the door. So, but again, it's one of those things where, if you're on the fence, if you're thinking this is something that you should do, you can do it. You can make that. In my particular case, it's about a half an hour every single day investment into putting together a story and sharing it. It's not something where you have to spend 8 hours working on it or 10 hours
Mhm.
working on it, because marketing is one of those things where, people really struggle. And when I say marketing, I'm not talking about for your business. It could be for your nonprofit. It could be for your cause.
Mhm.
It could be for, you're helping out with a fundraiser or anything else like that. There's any number of reasons out there why you would want to share your story, this path that you are on as well. So, don't think yourself you have to make it overly complicated. Anybody who reads my stories, I think it's like maybe 2 to 3 minutes to read them. And it's just, here's the story, here's what happened, here's the lesson learned, and move on. So I'll throw that out there to your listeners as well. But the most important thing though, get started, consume content, consume stories, see, what other people are doing, and then, go and execute it yourself. It's probably, I won't say probably, it is the best thing that you can do for your business, for your nonprofit, for your fundraiser, for whatever it is that you're doing. Just start sharing those stories so people can connect with you.
Awesome. And would you be okay with me if I put a link to your Facebook profile in the show notes? So if people wanted to see your,
that's awesome. Yeah. I'm an open connector. Every time somebody sends me a friend request, I always connect, because I have no idea where these people are coming from. If they, if they're a friend of a friend, or a friend of a friend of a friend, or, whatever it is. Yeah. I'm an open connector. So yeah, go ahead and share that link. That'd be awesome.
Okay, perfect. And then also, we, during the intro, we kind of talked about the Entrepreneur's Guide to LinkedIn Marketing Secrets. How can someone access that if they were interested in getting that?
Sure. So what they could do, of course, is when they subscribe to Coffee with Cliff, if they want to have a copy of the book, and actually I just updated it a handful of weeks ago.
Okay.
But if somebody is interested in that, they can always shoot me a note and just say, hey man, is there a way that I can get a copy of the book? I'll be more than happy to send it to you as a PDF. It's something that I give away for free.
Okay. Awesome.
So, it's got great examples in there for people to follow. I'm a big believer in LinkedIn. I produce a lot of my content on LinkedIn. So, if anybody's interested in using LinkedIn, definitely shoot me a note.
Awesome. Well, Cliff, I'm so excited to have you on as a first guest, and I'll definitely have you back. Like I said, I could talk to you for hours, and I just want, I've said it a few times on here, but you have inspired me. You continue to inspire me. And I love what you're doing. I love the amount of value that you are bringing to people, the authenticity, the vulnerability, just being out there, being you. And that is awesome. And that is, probably the top reason that I wanted you to be the first guest on here.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you.
That is awesome. So I'm rooting for you in every possible way that can be done. And I look forward to seeing where you go, and, the success that you have, not necessarily financially or anything like that, but in your ability to impact those. Because I have no doubt that you'll hit your 1 million, and honestly, you should probably change it to 100 million. Because I think that I think that you are going to impact people in such a way that they will impact others, and you will never truly have the right number, the exact number of how many people that you have impacted. Because even when I talk about you on my podcast, you are impacting those people that you've never even heard of before. I probably have never even met them before. So, and whoever they share that with. So, like I said, I'm rooting for you. I've been so lucky to have you, come into my life and be what I consider a friend. And, although you moved to the other coast, hopefully when I'm out there sometime, we'll be able to meet up, or if you get back over here on this coast, we'll go out and get some coffee with Cliff.
Awesome. Love it, brother.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Cliff. I appreciate your time.
Yes. Thanks, Brandon. Thank you again.
Yep. All right.
Yep.